and welcome to my first ever budget reset. So I've been thinking about doing these types of videos for a little while now, and I have only just decided in like the last week that I would go ahead with this and actually make it a reality, because I do think that as a content creator and as someone who's basically doing this full time, I think it's really good to be transparent with finances and transparent with, the approximate income that I am making each month. And you can kind of have a little bit more insight into the life of a content creator and the expenses involved with it too. Also just the day-to-day lifestyle living expenses and how it all works into a budget. So if you've been watching my videos for a little while now, I've spoken about using a budget and the fact that my partner and I regularly do use a budget each month for our income, just to make sure we're kind of on track for savings, but also making sure that we're earning enough money to cover said expenses as well that I mentioned previously. Now, obviously, as someone who does own their own home, there are a lot of expenses involved with that. So I would love to delve into that a little bit more, and just even in the general freelance realm of that, and talking about maybe how we actually got our house and how it was a bit of a struggle and some of the things that we did to kind of make things easier for ourselves, but also just talking about the month-to-month expenses involved with that, because there are so many, as most homeowners would know. And even if you are paying rent, it's a very similar process. You're having to outlay for that each month, and it can be difficult to budget when you're a freelancer or a content creator and you don't know how much money is coming in each month. So hopefully these videos will give a little bit more insight into how I kind of look at my financial situation as a content creator and freelancer, and hopefully you will gain that little bit more insight. So we are starting off with a February budget. Now we're starting from scratch. We are wiping the slate clean for this month, and I'm going to use a totally blank template for this. Now, if you have been watching some of my videos before, I have spoken about the CoPlenty templates that I use, and I quite often for my monthly reset videos use their goal tracking template, which I really love, but I also use their budgeting templates, and their budgeting templates are amazing. So if you are interested in checking those out, I do actually have a link in the description box below. It is an affiliate link, but it also does have a discount code if you're interested in those. I just find them to be really great all-round budget templates. I know with the one that I am using currently, it also has like a savings and debt tracker, and also like a debt snowball calculator, which is really handy if you've got some debt that you need to get rid of quickly, or you want to get rid of as quickly as possible. It's a really good part of the template to utilize. For those of you who are new to this channel though, my name is Kaylee and I'm a beauty and fashion photographer based near Sydney, Australia. However, I'm also a content creator, and this has basically taken up the majority of my job in the last couple of years. There's been a really big shift for me from freelancing into content creation. So I have recently developed this channel to talk about all things business, social media, freelancing, and content creation. I feel like there is a lot more to be said about this particular field of work, and it is not easy to always get that information online. So I try and make my channel as transparent as possible when it comes to everything involved with being a content creator or even a freelancer and a business owner. So it's a fairly quiet morning, so I'm really hoping to just kind of get into the budget today and show you guys what I usually do and how I usually do it, I should say, to actually budget my income and my partner's income for the month, and really look at our expenses and where our kind of goals are lying as well financially. I'm just going to be talking about some of the expenses I also have for my business specifically, so you can see kind of how much I'm spending on that per month, and then also our personal stuff as well, because I do think it's handy to see how people are living their lifestyles and what they are spending on average. It's kind of good to always have that insight into other people's lives. I feel like money is that really big thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about a lot. I personally have no problem talking about it. I quite enjoy talking about money, and especially as someone who does freelancing, I talk about it not to brag in any sort of sense. And look, to be honest, my income is nothing specifically to brag about, I wouldn't say, but I'm very fortunate to be in the position where I can do something that I really enjoy and love and get paid for it, and also feel like I am covering my expenses at the same time, because as we all know, with today's living standards, the cost of living is ridiculous. And I must say that our budget has definitely changed over the years from what it was a few years ago to now. So I really just want to talk about those things that we are spending money on at the moment, or things that we have even cut back on to kind of help with our budget. And as I said, we're going to start from a clean slate. I'm going to start a brand new budget spreadsheet for this, and let's get into it. Okay, so you'll see here on the front page of the budget template, we've got a bit of a readme. So it basically just goes through some details of the budget spreadsheet and how to use it. I'm actually just going to go across to the actual part of the budget spreadsheet that we need most. And you can see here, this is the clean slate that I was talking about. So what I'm actually going to do, because I really tend to stuff these templates up, I tend to stuff a lot of Excel spreadsheets up. I'm not the best at them. I would love to get better with using them. But I do tend to stuff the formulas up a little bit. So to make sure that we keep all the original formulas intact so I don't screw it up and I can easily copy it again, I'm just going to make a copy of this. So I'm just actually going to go to duplicate. Okay, so now you can see that we've got our copy down the bottom here. I'm just going to double click this and rename it February. And now that we have that done, we can start changing a couple of the dates as well. So you'll see up here, it says this month starts from January 1st. We're going to change that to February 1st. And just to let everyone know, these figures are in Australian dollars. You can actually change the currency of the template. So we are working with Australian dollars because I live in Australia. So you'll see that we have our totals up here. This is going to be basically the total of all income, bills, subscriptions, everything, expenses wise, and savings, debt. Everything is like summed up here, and it's really kind of like the main tab we'll be looking towards as well. Now underneath we have our income, and I love that about these spreadsheets is that the fact that because you have so many different streams of income a lot of the time as a freelancer or as a content creator, you can actually list it and break it down if you want to, and I think that that's great. We've also got our bills section here, which would be like utilities and just regular bills that are coming in each month. Subscriptions and memberships, similar thing. Then we've got our expenses over here, and that's your everyday expenses, groceries, dining out, fuel, shopping. Then we've got our savings over here, so any savings accounts that you like to add to. And then we have debt, good old debt. And then moving across here, just to show you kind of how this all works. Once you've filled in all of these spaces and filled in all of your expenses for the month so you know how much that's totaling, you will then go down to your transactions tracker during the month and you'll start entering all of your transactions in from your accounts, and you'll categorize it all so you can kind of see how much you're spending on each category by the end of the month. And it's just a really specific and detailed way to do this. And then it's going to calculate throughout the month where most of your money is going and when did you spend most of your money. So it kind of gives you little graphs and a bit more of a visual element, which I love because I'm a visual person. I don't really love looking at really boring spreadsheets, which is another reason I really like these, because they look pretty, and I like that. So we're going to start off with income. Why not? So in terms of budgeting income, it is really difficult for my partner and I because obviously, as I've mentioned, I'm a freelancer, I'm a content creator. I never know how much exactly I'm going to be getting in the month. So it is really hard to budget. I can kind of have a rough idea with some of the streams of income that I have, like some of my sponsorships are ongoing. My YouTube channel is usually ongoing. I usually have a fairly sort of standard amount at the moment that I'm getting from YouTube, so I can kind of budget for that. But for a lot of the other stuff that I have going on, so selling presets, selling courses, anything like that, I usually don't add into my income because I don't like to over budget for things. I like to under budget, and then if I have extra things come throughout the month, which quite often does happen, then it's a bonus for me. And that's all it is. It's just a bonus, and then you've got extra money at the end of the month to play with. We're actually going to start off with my partner's income though, because I feel like that's a little bit easier. It's still not 100% on the mark of what he earns because he's actually more on an hourly rate versus a salary. He actually works for an American company. I think that's a little bit more common, maybe. I'm not really sure. But with his hourly rate, that means that it does sort of fluctuate month to month in terms of the hours that he's worked, and we're never really going to get a really specific amount of how much he earns. We only have a rough idea. And again, I like to under budget. So if anything else comes in throughout the month, that's great. But it's always better to be a little bit conservative with your budget, especially if you have slightly more inconsistent income each month. And particularly on my end, when I really don't know how much of that money is going to come in by the end of the month, it's a really good idea to make sure that you're kind of looking at that and thinking a little bit more conservatively. So for my partner's income, so I'm just going to put Dan's pay. So his payday is usually towards the end of the month. I think it's around like the 25th. And we're going to say expected. I usually put down about 4.2. This is all after taxes, by the way, and superannuation, HEX debts, all the rest of it. So in Australia, we have a certain amount that we have to have contributed to our superannuation, which I believe in America, it's like similar to the 401k. And that is compulsory for workers over here. So we actually have to have, I think, oh God, it could be about 10% at the moment, but I know they're looking at lifting it and raising it continuously. It could even be 12%. I haven't actually been keeping up because as a self-employed person, I actually have to contribute that money personally myself. I actually don't have anyone to do that on my behalf. So I have to look at contributing a portion of my income to that. Now for Dan, he's expected, as I said, I would probably put down 4.2. As I said, after taxes, I'm not going to put before tax income for either of us because that is money that we can't actually utilize. I have to put that money aside personally, especially for tax. Dan's comes in already after tax each month anyway, which is great. All of that is taken care of. But as I mentioned, my superannuation, my taxes, all the rest of that has to be factored in. And I will usually end up with a smaller amount that I put in and a more conservative amount again. So we're just going to put the expected as 4.2 for Dan. And usually it has been coming in a little bit higher, but I just like to be that bit more conservative, as I mentioned, just in case of that fluctuation. Now I'm just going to leave a break here and I'll put down for the next budget. I'm just actually going to put my YouTube income in first, and we're going to say, I think I usually get paid from YouTube on about, it's between the 21st and 23rd. It really depends on how the weekend falls. So unfortunately, I think it's going to be more like the 24th this month because it usually doesn't come in on the 21st, but we'll go 24th. And I'm going to put in $350. Now, again, that is after tax. So usually I earn a little bit more than that from YouTube, but I'm not going to add in any extra because I want to make sure I am paying my taxes. I'm actually just going to put this here so it's like super easy for me to actually, does that work? Hopefully it doesn't fall off and hopefully it's not too muffled. I apologize if the audio is a bit muffled. It's just easier to do this with two hands. So after I put in YouTube, I'm actually going to put in my next amount of income. That would be for sponsorships. Now, sometimes I break this all down a little bit more if I know exactly what's coming in each month, but for now, I think we're just going to leave it as a little bit more vague, a little bit more estimated. And for sponsorships, so basically for a lot of my income, unless I know for sure that something's coming in on a certain day, I really like to put this towards the end of the month as my due date because I don't want to, again, budget that I'm going to be getting income at the beginning of the month if that's not the case. So I actually really like to budget this for the end of the month. So let's just say the 28th, last day of February. And for sponsorships this month, with a couple that I have, I'm going to budget about 3.3. I think it actually might be a little bit more than that, but again, don't really want to overestimate for that. Want to make sure I'm being conservative. So that is across my two main channels. So that is this channel and my photography channel. And that 3.3 is kind of across both from different sponsorships. So that is what I'm budgeting for this month. UGC is another one that I'm actually going to budget for because I do have a UGC video that I'm working on at the moment. Again, I'm going to make that the end of the month as a due date. And I actually have an amount that has been owed to me for a couple of weeks, but because it was a pay cycle thing and the company that I was doing the UGC for had to wait until the next pay cycle. I haven't been paid for it yet. So I'm going to add in, I think it was about 2,710. That is what I am due to get from UGC this month. That does not happen every month, but I know that I am owed that specific amount this month, and that is across a couple of different brands. Now, one thing I also want to mention is that my partner actually gets paid monthly, and for a lot of people that would suck, but for us it actually works okay, as much as weekly or fortnightly pay would be wonderful. Monthly actually works okay too because our mortgage is currently set to monthly. We've matched that as well, and because a lot of my income may not even come through until the end of the month, it just sort of works for us at the moment. Ideally, I would love to pay my mortgage fortnightly. I feel like that would be a lot better because you're actually getting in more payments per year, which means you're actually paying off a little bit more of your mortgage each year as well. And I think it would just break it up a little bit more rather than having one large sum. But the fact that we are both getting paid a little bit more like on a monthly basis works for us at the moment. So a lot of our bills and mortgage repayments are set to match that. So in terms of the income for this month, total income is looking like about $10,560. It does sound like a lot of money, and obviously I'm very grateful for the money that is coming in this month. This is actually quite a good month, but wow, there are so many expenses that I have to go through with you, so just sit tight. We'll go through those. So unfortunately, Australia is renowned for being extremely expensive, and mortgages are no different. I'm actually going to go through some of the debt that we have. We actually don't have a lot of debt. Most of it is our mortgage, but yes, it is a very expensive country to live in. The cost of living here is crazy. I think the population is pretty lucky in the sense that across the board, people do tend to earn a little bit more than elsewhere overseas, but at the same time, it is not really matching the cost of living crisis at the moment. So there's a lot of people struggling out there, and we have definitely had our moments in the last couple of years of struggling, hence the budget, and hence why we are onto this now every month to kind of see where our money's going and what we can be doing to sort of cut back if we need to. So moving on to bills now, this is the fun part. So let's go through some of the utilities first for our house. So we've got electricity, and that is due, I think, around the middle of the month. I'm just going to say the 10th of Feb. I usually try and pay the electricity bill off a little bit earlier because my partner and I have in the last 6 months started doing, it's kind of called points hacking, where a lot of people like to do this, where they try and get as many points for airlines and loyalty programs as possible. So for my partner and I, we really, really love to travel, and we sort of figured about 6 months ago that we should start doing something about this. And if we were already spending money in certain areas, then we should be trying to get points. So we actually chose the Qantas frequent flyer program and have started to really try and accumulate points with Qantas. We have done quite well for 6 months, I feel, and it's really been a matter of just seeing and looking at all of our utilities, seeing if there's partnered companies with Qantas that are offering bonus deals, bonus points deals, things like that to switch. As long as we're not further out of pocket, I'm okay with doing that. And I think that that's a good way to kind of get yourself some extra points. So maybe you'll get a free flight somewhere or a heavily reduced flight in the coming years. And yeah, we've managed to actually do quite a bit with that so far. So if you want to hear me talk about that a little bit more, I can go into depth in another one of these budget videos. But we did recently change over to an electricity company that was partnered with Qantas, and we got a little bonus for that, which was great. And we actually started saving a bit on our electricity bill, which was amazing. We were paying roughly about $100 more with the other company we were using. So our budget for that now is about $85 a month, which is pretty good. It's been as low as $60 in the month, but at the moment with summer, we are using so much air conditioning and it is just so hot, so we really do tend to use a little bit more energy. Now for internet, and that is going to be due, I would say, let's just go around the same, about 10th of Feb. And so internet, we're paying roughly about $95 a month at the moment. Pet insurance is the next bill, and I believe the pet insurance that we have is due around the 26th of Feb. And that is $113. Now, we've only just recently in the last couple of months gotten some pet insurance because we felt it was a good idea. We have 2 doggos, 2 whippets, and one of them is 5 years old, one of them is 2 years old. So we felt that as one of our doggos is getting, a little bit more mature, we felt that it was important to have some insurance covering that. And even for puppies and younger dogs, I think it's a good idea. So that $113 does cover both of them, and we just felt that it was going to be a good idea because you never know what's going to happen. And unfortunately, doggos in Australia, and like a lot of places in the world, don't have their own Medicare system where they can have things covered. So we wanted to make sure we were going to be covered if there was any serious incidents that come up with them. We just want to make sure that they're 100% covered. And then we also have our car insurance, which is obviously a necessity. Again, I think that's due around maybe about the 20th of Feb. And for that, it is currently $85. However, that is due to go up, which is just wonderful, as everything does. Now I'm gonna just do a little break here, and I'm actually going to just separate some of these extra bills because now we've got our bills that are a little bit more like quarterly, and we don't necessarily pay monthly. So our strata, because we live in a townhouse complex, we are not in a full home. So our complex charges, I believe actually that will be due, the next bill for that is on the 1st of March. Again, this is a quarterly bill, and we would usually set aside $210 a month for that. So by the time the quarterly bill comes around, it's about $630. That has gone up substantially since we bought this place. It's frustrating, but it does happen everywhere. And yeah, it's quite a lot of money each quarter to just part with for strata, but I know that some people have it worse. I know some apartment complexes and other townhouse complexes can be really expensive. So it's just that extra thing that we need to pay for. Then we have our council rates. So we pay that quarterly, and I believe that's due, I think, the 28th of this month. And that is going to be worth about $385. And I'm going to say about $129 for that. We put aside for council rates. The bill is around $385. So that's what we would have to put aside each quarter. The next would be our gas bill, and that is due, I think it's actually this month. And let's go with the 10th of Feb. And gas this month is actually going to be $115. So I'm going to put in the full amount of the gas bill because I know that we haven't specifically put money away the last couple of months, I think, for the gas bill. So I'm just going to add that in as like the full amount that we're paying for this month. Water bill, I think that is also due around the end of the month. And we're going to put in $71. That is roughly a third of what we usually pay, or it's a third of our last water bill, I believe. Sorry if the audio has just like gone all crackly or weird because it actually fell a little bit into my t-shirt. So hopefully it's not too muffled. Then we have our car rego. So that is basically our registration fee that we need to pay. I believe that is also due this month, which is great. We've got so many bills due this month. So I think car rego for 6 months is around $160, and we're going to put in the 10th of Feb. So it's $160. And then we also have our green slip due, and that'll be due around the 10th as well. And in Australia, we have a thing called a green slip along with our car registration that we need to make sure is paid for either every 6 months or every year. I think you can do it quarterly as well, and that is going to be about $182. So these ones I'm actually going to highlight in yellow because they are all more of like a quarterly / half yearly bill. So we'll just highlight them as yellow. And now moving on to our subscriptions. So you may be surprised with our subscriptions and memberships and things like that. We actually don't have a lot of like, I guess, personal subscriptions, really just the basics. And I guess a few years ago, we decided to cut down on a lot of them because we kind of felt like it was just getting too expensive. And with the subscriptions that a lot of people need to have these days, it is wild how much actually gets spent on them. So we did tend to cut back quite a bit with this. But our current subscriptions, I'm going to go through some of my business ones, and they're mainly business ones, is Flowdesk. And I currently pay about 30 Australian dollars for that each month. I believe that is due at the end of the month. I'm going to say the 28th. And that's about 30 Australian dollars. I managed to get a cheaper deal with Flowdesk because quite a long time ago, when they were still in their beta version, I signed up then and it was only $19 US, I think, at the time. And you could get it as a lifetime thing if you stayed with them. So I still paid $30 a month for that. And Flowdesk, as I should explain, is a platform where you can go and create your own newsletters. So I was doing this for my photography business, and I plan on actually doing it for this channel as well this year. So I really wanted to have an email list and a newsletter. It's just another way of having, I guess, subscribers and followers online that doesn't necessarily involve social media specifically too. I think that's always good to have different avenues there. The next subscription I have is to Xero. Now this is for all my financials. This is my invoicing. All of my tax information is in Xero, and I really hope Xero is watching, to be honest, because I could do with a Xero sponsorship because Xero is expensive. So usually this is due, I think, around the middle of the month. I'm going to say the 10th actually. And my Xero subscription per month is $90. And unfortunately, I have to go for the higher amount for this particular subscription because I need to charge a lot of the time in US dollars for my overseas clients. I would say the majority of my sponsorships and things like that actually come from US clients, and I need to charge in US dollars, and it's just easier doing that. There's a lot less hassle and that if I can easily do it through my invoices, and unfortunately Xero does charge for that. Now I was with QuickBooks, so if you are looking for a cheaper alternative for accounting software, QuickBooks is definitely cheaper. I did find it a little bit more clunky though, and I also found that a lot of accountants here in Australia prefer Xero, they use Xero, and actually don't love getting to use QuickBooks. And I've actually found in the past that they've charged me more on my tax return because they've had to go into my QuickBooks information and everything, and it's just been more confusing for them because they don't tend to use it as much as Xero. But at the same time, I do like using Xero. It is very clear cut, I feel, for someone who's not really familiar with accounting software, and really it does what I need it to do. So unfortunately, I can't cut down on that amount, but yeah, $90 is quite expensive each month. My next subscription is Premiere Pro. I'm just going to say Adobe Premiere Pro. That is my video editing software. That is usually due, I feel like, around the 20th of the month, and that is actually going up to $35 or so, which is annoying because that was $30 for the longest time, and of course they're just starting to put their prices up again. And Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom bundle I also have. I've had that for a long time. I want to say that's actually due at the end of the month, and that is currently about $15 a month for both of those programs. So obviously these are necessities for my YouTube channel, but also for my work, my freelance work as being a photographer. I need those programs, so they are definitely business necessities. Now I have a couple of different storage options. So I actually have some storage with Apple, and that is $4.49. So I actually have Apple storage, and I also have Google Drive storage. Now I use my Apple storage primarily for my personal stuff on my iPhone. It's just easier for it to all kind of go to Apple storage and backing up. So I use that for that. And I also use my Google storage primarily for my business stuff. And I think that's due around the same time, about the 4th. So the Google storage that I currently use, I think, is about $15 a month. And that is for, I think it might be the 2 terabyte option. I'll have to double check that, but my partner and I actually share our Google storage together, and it's just easier to have that higher amount of storage. So I think it's around $15 a month. We both use it though. So the next thing is Google Workspace, which I actually use for my email address. And that I think is due like around, maybe let's say the 25th. And it's about 11 Australian dollars, I believe, per month. And then I have my phone bill, which let's say is 14th of Feb this month that's going to come out, and it's about $100 a month. I have actually nearly finished paying off that phone. I did get it a few years ago. However, whether I get a new phone this year or not, I'm not really sure. It's working okay at the moment, but we'll see, fingers crossed. And then the next few things that we kind of have are a bit more like personal things. So for us, we do have a subscription to Spotify at the moment. We did cut that at one point because we wanted to save that just a little bit more money each month. I think we pay that on around the middle of the month. Let's go 14th. And that's for Duo subscriptions. That's my partner and I using that. Then we also have our gym membership, and I think our gym membership is really reasonable. We actually only pay about, I think it's $80 a month or so, and I believe that comes out fortnightly. So I'm just going to leave the blank due date there because it actually does come out twice a month. And the overall amount that we spend on it is $79.60 for two people, and I actually think it's a pretty good gym. So I feel like that's pretty reasonable for us to each spend $40 a month or so on a gym membership. Compared to what we were paying, we actually switched over our gym membership a couple of years ago when things were getting a bit crazy with cost of living. So we actually changed that over, and so glad we did. And then we just have a couple more expenses. So I'm actually just going to say health insurance and talk about the combined amount that we actually spend on that each month. I think that's usually due around the end of the month, let's say the 26th. And for me, I personally spend about $208. I spend a little bit more on mine for specific reasons. And then Dan's health insurance is about $135. So it is about $343 a month for both of us to have private health insurance. For those of you who don't know, in Australia, we do have Medicare, which is our public health system, and it actually it offers, in a lot of cases, free healthcare. However, we do have certain costs that are not covered, and there is also the option to have private health insurance. And unfortunately, a few years ago, our government put into effect a scheme that kind of made it not compulsory for people over the age of 30 or 31 or so to get it, but they did really kind of force us into that position a little bit. And there's a few reasons why we decided to get it, but one of the reasons is that if we wanted to pick up health insurance or private health insurance later on down the track, we would actually start to have a loading for each month month, I think, that we are not covered by private health insurance, or for each year. And that actually makes it more expensive in future if we choose to get it, which was a bit frustrating because they're kind of like luring you into it. And I believe it is to do with the fact that we have an aging population here in Australia, and it is putting a lot of pressure on the public system. Therefore, they are wanting more younger people to start taking up private health insurance. And this was kind of like not an incentive. It was kind of like the opposite of what an incentive is. And they also make you pay a much higher amount if you earn over a certain threshold each year. They will make you pay the Medicare levy surcharge, I believe it's called. So that was something that a couple of years ago I was potentially looking at having it to pay as well, which was just not even worth it. I was better off getting private health in that circumstance. But yeah, when I look at $343 a month, it's a lot of money, and it is frustrating to know that we're paying that every month. But at the same time, things like dental are not really included under Medicare, and certain optical elements as well. So I need glasses, I need contacts every year. I need to obviously go to the dentist regularly, as everyone does, and that is also kind of covered under that. So at least I feel a subscription like that is kind of putting it into our own health, and it's not really just kind of one that we took lightly. And then we also just have Dan's phone bill, which I think is due around the same time, and that is around $100 as well. So you can see there our subscriptions and memberships total about $842 of that. And I would say close to half of them are more business related subscriptions. A portion of my phone bill is considered a business related expense. But yes, there's quite a few expenses in there each month that other people wouldn't usually have. But if you're a content creator or you're a freelancer and you are working for yourself, there are often business expenses that you need to pay for, and some of them are unavoidable, and it is just something to factor in. So let's go over now to our daily expenses or regular expenses. So groceries, we usually budget about $450 for groceries each month. Again, that has changed in previous years where we were able to get away with a much smaller budget for groceries. Now that everything is just so expensive, we have had to up that. That is just for two of us each month. 450 is usually pretty easy to get in below that for us. We are pretty strict with what we buy though. Dining out, now this is kind of like, would you say like our Achilles heel of our monthly expenses? And dining out is something we really enjoy doing. We don't do a lot of like entertainment things together. We don't go to a lot of concerts. We don't do a lot of that sort of stuff these days. And dining out is kind of like that one thing that we get to do together, whether it's getting coffees, whether it's going to breakfast on the weekend, or, you know, just kind of like enjoying life. That kind of like comes into it. So I usually set a budget of around $300 for dining out each month, but God, I just know that we do not stick to that. So for this month, I'm going to put $400 in, and that may actually not sound like a lot because honestly in Australia, $400 might get you like 4 dinners for both of you out a month. So that is including coffees that we might buy on a regular basis. That is including some breakfasts. We tend to share meals. If we want to cut things down a bit, we will try and share meals, or we'll have like one meal between us and then get a bowl of chips or fries or whatever, just to make things a little bit cheaper. And it actually does work a lot. So sometimes it's just those little things that you can kind of work into your regular budget, so you can still do some of the things that you like and love without having to spend the earth. So I am going to put $400 in there. Scratch that. I'm going to put it back to $300 because I think this month will include a little bit more budgeting. I'm going to do $300. We'll see if we can stick to that. Probably not. But again, this is a budget. So some things we really want to try and stick to. So I'm just going to try and stick to $300 this month. I don't know if I can do it. Okay, so fuel is usually under $200 a month for us. We both work from home, which is really wonderful. So that means that we don't actually have to spend a lot of money on fuel. Sometimes we go quite under that amount. And that is really a great thing about, I guess, working and living at home, is the fact that you really don't have to spend a lot on petrol unless you're kind of going somewhere. Shopping, I don't really have anything in particular this month that I'm going to factor in. That's for shopping and home, and we usually will do this. We are pretty strict with what we buy, and especially when it comes to clothing and things that are kind of like not necessities, especially clothing for me. I feel over the last number of years, I have become a lot more specific with what I buy. I'm very particular. I do tend to shop at a lot more secondhand places and consignment stores now, and I really enjoy that. So if I need clothing, I will try and budget that in. But this particular month, I feel like I don't really necessarily need anything, so I'm not going to put anything in there for now. Home as well, we don't really have anything in particular that we need this month. We had to get some blinds last month. But apart from that, there's nothing specifically with the home. There's other things actually to do with the home, which I will add into the custom expenses. But other than that, there's nothing in particular that I'm going to budget for the home. Gifts, I'm going to budget, let's say $30, because it is my brother's birthday and I'll just get him something, a little something small. We don't tend to spend a lot on each other, like family members wise. We know that the cost of living is crazy these days, and you know, buying gifts for everyone in the family as well these days can be such a crazy thing and can really blow out very quickly. Oh my god, there's like a fly in front of me. I swear every time I do a video down in my lounge room there's like flies, so I apologize. Okay, so pets this month. Okay, both of our dogs need some injections. They are due for those, so I believe they're going to be $30 to $50 each, I think. Unfortunately, not covered by their pet insurance. They don't really cover routine care, so I think that needs to be done. And we also need to get them food each month, which is about, I think, roughly $100. We do tend to budget for that. I'm going to budget about $300, I think, for pets. I think that should cover injections, vet consultation, anything like that. So we're going to say $300. Now, health and medical, I actually have to budget a little bit more for this month because there's a couple of scans and things that I need to do that are considered private scans, and I don't think there's any Medicare rebate back on those, which sucks. So I'm going to say like $700. I'm going to be a little bit more conservative with that. Budget a little bit more. If it's less, amazing. If not, we'll see. Now, the first custom expense I'm going to put here is trip. Because though we don't do a lot of things like entertainment expenses and we don't have a lot of personal subscriptions between us, we do like to travel. And that is a lot of the time where our money saved goes for our own enjoyment. So we actually have booked some flights recently. I won't say where just yet, but we have booked them. It was a very spontaneous thing to do. But I believe we've also got just a couple of other expenses associated with that trip. So I think this month I'm going to put in for the budget there about $15.80 or so. I think that was the total that I had for the flights and a couple of other things. So that's going to be set aside for that. So that is a little bit of an expense this month. Events. Now, usually I wouldn't have events even down as a custom expense because we really don't go to too many events, but there is one, and I think it's going to be about $43 or so for the event for both my partner and I to go. So I'm just going to budget that in. And then we also have a really exciting expense here for pest control, because for those of you who own a home, the work and the money just never ends. There's always something that needs to be done. And unfortunately for us, pest control is one of those things this month. We have birds nesting in our roof. They are not native birds and they're considered really big pests here in Australia. And yeah, we just want to kind of like sort that out. They've like chewed through the side of our house and like where we've got like vents and things like that, and it's just like looking like a mess. So that is going to have to be done. And I think the quote for that was about $350. So that is our main expenses for this month. That is a lot of expenses. All of those expenses right there are totaling $3,953. I know it makes you feel sick when you look at that amount. But like, again, that is a $1,500 amount for our trip, which we are going to be setting aside. So that's at least something good out of that amount of expenses. That would not be our usual expenses each month, and especially not with budgeting for health and medical and even some of the things for pets and pest control. So those bills are not our usual bills, and you can kind of see if you subtract those what our regular kind of payments would be. Now we're going to go to the debt side. So we're going to finally get to the mortgage. Now, personally, I feel like our mortgage, we don't have a lot to complain about in some ways compared to some people. I know that mortgages can be just astronomical these days here in Australia. And our budget for our mortgage is currently $2,996. So it's about $3,000 a month. And even though that might sound like a lot to some of you, and then for others, it might not sound like a lot at all. For us, it's enough at the moment, honestly, with our expenses and other things that are constantly coming in, cost of living pressures. it's enough. Obviously my partner and I would love to get a home one day and move into something a little bit bigger, have a bit more of a yard for the dogs. But at this time, we're just going to have to sit tight and do a little bit more saving, I think. So in terms of the rest of our debt, as I mentioned, we don't really have a lot. We do have a credit card, and that is usually due, I think, around the 5th of each month. And with our credit card, I know our minimum payment is around $95 a month. So I'm just going to put the minimum payment in there. And then if anything else gets paid off, that's like bonus. Plus I have to look at what our leftover total is. And then we also have our car loan. Now we didn't really have a really huge car loan, and that is due around the 10th of each month. And that is about $357 for my partner and I to pay each month. So if you're halving that, that's like $180 or so. It's not too bad. Like our car loan really isn't the worst of our issues. But obviously I would love to try and get that paid off sooner rather than later, because it's just one of those bad debts that you just don't want to have. And the sooner that gets paid off, I think the better. And then we can really start to work towards, just little things like the credit card, and then mortgage will be next. So in terms of the expenses there, that's about $3,448. So let's go back over here to the beginning and let's see how much we've got left over. Now you'll see that we have about $1,000 left over for the month. So that $1,000 leftover amount, we really want to be putting into savings. So some of the accounts that we have are emergency, a secondary house fund, which we haven't been putting a lot of money into just yet, but we will start to. The more that our sort of debts are paid and that we feel we can add extra into that account. We also have a splurge account. That is more, we actually have separate splurge accounts, my partner and I, so we can kind of use that money for whatever we want. So sometimes when we have a bit of extra play money at each month, we will put extra money aside for us in those accounts. I usually have a business account for savings, travel. We have an account for a van because it's something that we've always really wanted, but again, we haven't really started putting into that account. That's just kind of like a pipeline thing in future that we'd like to do. And then we also have our shares. So this is kind of like our investments that we like to put money into when we do have that extra money kind of lying around. So in terms of what we're going to do with this money this month, I still sort of we have to discuss it, my partner and I, but I would say it would probably look like something. I would say for now, I'd probably like to put maybe $200 into the emergency account, maybe about $300 into our travel account. And actually, I'm going to just add a general savings account here because we actually do have one or two other things at the moment that we're trying to save for. So I would say the remainder would go into that. I don't want to be putting into too many accounts because we'll never save for anything then. So I think the remainder would be about $571.91. So let's just put that back into savings. We can always divvy it up from there into the other accounts if we feel we need to put money into another savings account. But I'd be really happy with just getting some money into the emergency account this month, travel account, and savings. And I feel like that would be pretty good. Obviously, I'd love to work towards putting a little bit extra to debt in that, but we didn't really, even though we had a pretty high income month this month, we don't really have a lot of leftovers because we do have a pretty high spend month, and there's quite a lot of bills there that usually would not be there this month. So for example, if that amount for the trip wasn't there, if that amount for the health and medical wasn't there, if the amount for the pest control, so there's probably at least about $2,500 there that usually wouldn't be in our expenses for the month. So if we're subtracting that, that would have been a nice amount of play money for the month to sort of do different things with. But for now, we did book that spontaneous trip because it's just something that we love to do together. As I mentioned, we don't really week to week have many subscriptions, many entertainment things that we do. We don't really budget for lots of things to do together except for dining out, and that's pretty much it. So I feel like that is a pretty well-rounded budget for the month. It's taking care of most of our expenses, which I'm very happy for. And then basically, as I mentioned, we would be going into this transactions tracker throughout the month, putting in all of my expenses, and then at the end of the month, we'll be able to see where the money's going and what I actually earned, some more like actual amounts. So basically what I'll do is at the beginning of March for the next budget reset video, I will talk about my February expenditures and what my actual income was, actual everything, and kind of go through everything then and what my transactions were. So just to kind of be a little bit more specific with everything and show you guys what actually happened throughout the month. I will try and do a review of the previous month, but also then the budget for the following month too. Well, thank you so much for watching this video today, and I really hope you enjoyed this budget reset video. If you want to see more videos like this one, please let me know in the comment section below, because I would love to do more of them. And make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I'll be posting a lot more videos in future. Let me know down in the comment section below if you have a similar budget routine to this, and whether you are looking at starting a bit more of a budget routine, or if you've got any financial goals specifically for 2025. I would love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comment section. Another quick reminder, if you want to go and check out the Code Plenty templates that I've mentioned in this video, there is a link in the description box below, and there also is a discount code, so make sure to utilize that if you're looking at purchasing them. But again, thank you so much for watching this video today, and I hope to do more of these in future. But thank you as always so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.